The authorities just told me I have to spend thousands of dollars in order to live off grid so I can have water. And we've been doing this for 3 years. It's quite incredible. So I'm going to explain what we do. I know some of you are going to say, oh, I've heard this before, but this is important. And besides, you might learn something that I throw in this time that I forgot to throw in the last 50,000 times. Okay, so I have a 275 gallon IBC tank. The IBC tank is food grade, and that's important. You can get chemical grade IBC tanks. As a matter of fact, we have an IBC tank down there at the chicken housing, and we use one of those IBC tanks as a housing for the chicks, like a chicken coop. We cut a hole in it, they can go in, we've put tree limbs in there so they can roost, and then when they get big enough, we just transfer them into the regular coop. That one had chemicals in it, and it was kind of a paint. I don't know what was in it. So we had to scrape all that paint out of it and get the smell out of it. So we had to be careful. But if we'd have put water in there, I'd have never trusted that thing. You can buy these on Facebook Marketplace all the time. They're always available. Just make sure that when you read the side of it, it says food grade or that it had some sort of food item in it. The other one, it was obvious. You couldn't have missed it. When you opened it up, you smelled the paint in it. I'm not sure what it was used for, probably some sort of fiberglass. It was a fiberglass shop. So I would imagine they repaired boats or something. What we do is we have a well. Now the well is pretty ancient. It was dug in the 60s, and today's standards, that well is not deep enough. It goes down about 130 feet. The pump itself goes down probably 110 feet or so. You want to keep that pump off the bottom of the well, otherwise you're always stirring up that dirt down there at the bottom. So the pump hangs down there off a rope. We have a nylon rope, it's yellow. The generator's running right now. The generator runs that pump. The pump we bought off Amazon, it's a 110 submersible pump. Now normally you can only find those in 220, but we found one off Amazon. Actually we found 3 or 4. This, I believe, is the smallest one they have. The reason we had to get a smaller one is when we repaired the pump, the lining, the well lining, it's a metal pipe that goes down and kind of creates a solid wall in the well. That way the well isn't always falling down in on itself. Well, it had a crack in it. So we had to get a grommet. It's called a well packer. And we only found one company that had it. It was like, I don't know, 150 bucks. I mean, it wasn't too terribly bad. And so then you put 4-inch pipes onto this well packer and you just drive that down in there. You can go to my watch list and see how I did that. I took a come along and tied it to a root basically on the ground, and I was able to pull that pipe down into the well with the come along. So now I have a new well casing. Well, the problem is I had that 4-inch pump going down into a 4-inch pipe. I knew I could get it down there because I watched YouTube videos on how to do it. You had to take all the shroud off of the pump and you could lower it down there. My fear was is if the pump ever went out, I'd never be able to get it out again. So that was just a little concern I had. So I bought another pump. I believe it was a 2.5-inch pump. Slid right down there, no problem. It only produces about 15 gallons per minute, whereas the 5-inch pump produced 30 gallons per minute. I actually like the 15 gallon per minute better with the way we operate here because I don't run into a deadhead. With the well being so old, it runs out of water pretty quickly. It takes about 15 minutes to recover. So with the 30 gallon pump, I would have to pump 5 to 10 gallons per minute through that pump. Otherwise you would burn up the pump. You got to have enough water going through it to keep it cool. If you slow that down too much, it'll get hot and just seize up on you. But with the 15 gallon pump, it actually never runs out of water. It gets close. It never just dries up. It kind of surges water. So I can reduce the flow on that to about 2 gallons per minute and it never deadheads. Now, the way you know that your pump is deadheading is it will start tush, tush. That's what it's called, deadhead. What's happening is the water inside the pump is getting so hot it's turning into steam. And so it's creating air bubbles, air pockets in your plumbing. If you get too much steam in there, that means you have no cooling going on in your pump. Well, with the 15 gallon versus the 30 gallon, I haven't had a deadhead since. Now, the other thing I did was about 70 feet down, I drilled a hole in the pipe itself. There were 2 reasons I did that. One, so it would never deadhead. Water is always spraying out of that hole. So even if I accidentally shut the water off or the hose gets kinked, water is still coming out of that hole and I will never have water not flowing through the pump. But more importantly, actually, is it also prevents it from freezing, because now the water drains down that pipe until it gets down to 75 feet. All that. So the hose is empty. It will never freeze. This tank could freeze one day. It never has. And we have a RV pump down here that pumps water from the tank into the house. That has froze. So if that freezes, I still have the well. I can run this hose here into the house, right into my water heater, which is a camping on-demand water heater. I've showed you that before. That camping water heater takes a hose, so I can just hook up the hose from the well to the water heater, turn it on, and I would have hot water. Now, I do use the generator to run that well, but I also can use my solar panels. On a day like this, I would have a lot of success with the solar panels. I can run the well off the solar panels and my battery for about 15 minutes, and then I have to kind of let the batteries charge back up for a little bit. I don't have quite enough solar panels, almost, but as the solar panels age, you lose efficiencies in them. And so they're about, what, almost 4 years old now. They last 20 years. You always get energy out of them, but they just lose efficiency. When rainwater hits a hot panel, so let's say it's a hot sunny day and all of a sudden rain comes in and hits a hot panel, it can crack the panel a little bit, causing more problems with your efficiencies. Instead of getting 1,000 watts out of my solar panel, let's say I'm getting 800 watts out of my solar panels. The positioning of the sun is way down south right now, so it takes it from the batteries. So that means I can only run it 15, 20 minutes, and then I need to shut it down so the batteries can charge back up a little bit and to start it back up. It's just more work. That's why I use the generator. Now, one thing you need to remember is you live off grid, you're gonna need a backup power source, like a generator. If you had a stream, you could do a water wheel and get electricity that way, or a windmill, but we don't live in a windy area. We live surrounded by trees and we don't have a stream. So the generator is just the best option for us. You'll look at a lot of off-gridders and they all have generators. Everyone I've seen has a generator. Now, we do have a backup water supply. We have a natural spring down the hill. As a matter of fact, I believe my well probably feeds that natural spring. I've showed you that natural spring several times. It's way down there, about 200 feet. The bottom of my well is actually above that natural spring, so water just flows down there. My well is part of the natural spring system. We live up here on a mountaintop. We're one of the highest peaks in the state of Missouri. One of the problems I have with my well, and I've explained this before, it can get dirty. That is reason why I've done all the work I've done to it. New well casing, that well packer with the new PVC pipe. I built this building with an extended roof on it. That roof keeps water away from the well. I put a new concrete pad down there, sealed it all up. I've got a French drain down here. I've showed you that. That means any water that comes by here will fall down to these rocks here into a 4-inch pipe and run off down the hill. Now, the other day I explained to you that during the first few rains of the spring season, the ditch up here collects a lot of leaves. So when we get a big rain, first rain of the year, first couple rains of the year, those leaves wash down into each one of those culverts. And so each culvert collects the leaves up, gets clogged, and then breaks loose. And so then you have a rush of water with those leaves going down to the next culvert. It gets clogged up, breaks loose. Finally, it comes down to my culvert, clogs up, and the water overflows the ditch. This is only once per year, twice per year that this happens. So the water comes from the ditch, which I'm pointing to right here, and runs straight to the well. You'll see here that it kind of has cut out a little ditch that goes straight to the well. I've showed this before. Now you'll see that my truck is parked right here. The ditch is right here. My house is right here. The well is right here. Kind of give you some perspective. So the ditch is just up here, I don't know, 20 feet. 50 or 60 feet is the well. So the water just runs straight to the well. So I showed you that French drain. The French drain gets overwhelmed. It just can't handle that much water once the leaves pack up against my culvert. Now, the other day, I was able to rake some of those leaves out. I saw it happening, so I ran out here in the rain. I pulled those leaves out, and I didn't get a lot of water running down to the well, but I did get some. It was unavoidable. I just couldn't get work fast enough. I thought, I'm going to try something. I decided I was going to cut another ditch right here. So you'll see that the French drain is right there. There's the well. Here's the ditch. That way, maybe I have a chance that some of the water will accumulate here and run down the hill. So I just did an experiment. I just wanted to see if this would work. But when I showed you that, I got people telling me you have to dig a pond. You don't have a choice. And I didn't understand this. I don't have a choice. One person suggested I dig a pond, but I don't have room to dig a pond. I don't know what, I mean, my house is right here. This is where we live. If I was going to put a pond, I'd put it down there by the chickens or something. Somebody said that I'd also have a backup water supply. Well, I have a backup water supply. I have that natural spring, which is clean water. I don't even have to filter it. I know people are talking about an SHTF situation, but in an SHTF situation, you don't want to have to use any more resources than you absolutely need to. So if you're having to filter your water, one of these days your filters are going to clog up. What are you going to do after they clog up? So having your pond as a backup, I mean, it's a great idea if you don't have any other choice. But if you have other choices, I don't understand the reasoning behind it. I said to the reply of the first comment, thousands of dollars for a pond, which I don't even know where I would put, or a $10 pipe. Because what I will do is, if this works, I'll just run a $10 another pipe, which I actually have over here. So I'll just drill holes in this like I did the first French drain, and I'll make a second French drain. That way I have two French drains catching that water and running it down the hill. Well, I got one guy saying, I'm a farmer, and these are just some of the things you have to accept as a farmer or an off-gridder or homesteader. He said, what you're going to run into is this is going to erode away so bad that you're going to have no choice but to put a pond here to collect the water. Well, I don't even understand this. You know, people always tell me their qualifications. You know, they're a farmer, they have a pond, they know exactly what they're talking about. Okay, so I get a pond. The water's still going to run down here once or twice a year. In a pond next to my house, which is going to collect mosquitoes, and now I'm going to have mosquitoes in the house. I'm going to already have a ditch because this is still going to erode away. Nothing's going to stop it from eroding, not even a pond. It's going to catch the water. Eventually it's going to fill up, and eventually it's going to overflow and run down the hill. So the only thing I've done is postponed what he was talking about. He says the ditch isn't going to work. Well, I don't understand why the ditch won't work. They use ditches on highways all throughout the country, and it seems to work mostly, except when there's leaves. Secondly, this happens twice a year. If it's going to erode away, it's going to take a millennial for that to happen over 2 years. This is just another idea of people spending thousands of dollars for a $5 problem. So if you'll click this up next box, take you to a video where I was talking about narcissism in our country and how it's affecting off-grid living. So I hope I can inspire you to only spend $5 on a $5 problem. Thanks for watching.